Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. The author, rahimahullah, he says, Bab mata tabdulu salatu wa amman tasqutu, faslun, wa tabdulu as-salatu bil-kalam, wa bil-ishtighali bima laysa minha, wa bitarki shartin aw ruknin amda. The chapter or the subchapter of when does the salah become null and void? When does the salah become batila? When does the prayer become invalid, false and broken and nullified? And who are the people that are exempt from offering the salah? When does a Muslim become exempt from making the salah? When do you not have to pray? In what extreme situation of illness, of sickness, of traveling, of injury, insanity, etc. The author, rahimahullah, he says that when a person speaks, the salah becomes null and void. When you speak, the salah becomes null and void. The author, he doesn't say in what language: Arabic, English, Urdu, Farsi, French, Somali, but he says bil kalam, speech. The author, rahimahullah, he doesn't say intentional speech. He doesn't say speech that pertains to fixing the salah. When the imam makes a mistake, if someone says to the imam, "You're in the fifth rak'ah, please sit down. You forgot, ya shaykh, ya imam." He said kalam, period. Whether the imam speaks, the one behind the imam speaks, anyone who makes any kalam in the salah, forgetfully, intentionally, unintentionally, to fix the prayer, not to fix the prayer, the author says that the salah is now null. Number 2, and also preoccupying yourself with that which is not from the salah. That which is not from the actions of the prayer, the nature of the prayer, the movements of the prayer, the supplications of the prayer. That which, when a person would see you from a distance, would know for sure that you're not praying, such as a certain type of movement, such as walking, eating, drinking, and anything like this, in which a person, if they saw you from a distance, they wouldn't think that you were making salah. And there's a big difference between a person taking a few steps in the salah, a person scratching his hand in the salah, a person even cracking his knuckles in the salah, between a person walking for 10 to 15 steps, or jumping up and down, or drinking a bottle of water, and things like this, which is clear that a person is not offering the salah. And if you pay close attention, the author, he said al-ishtighal. He said being busy. And he didn't say just doing something, making a movement, but he said being busy. In other words, the movement is continuous. The movement is abundant. The movement preoccupies you from the prayer in its original nature. And there are many other issues and details with regards to that. We're moving on. He says, and the prayer also becomes null and void by a person intentionally leaving off one of the conditions and or intentionally leaving off one of the pillars of the salah. So the author says, if a person intentionally does not perform and fulfill one of the conditions of the salah is null. And he clearly mentioned intentionally, and he didn't say forgetfully. So based off of this, hypothetically based off of the author's speech, is that if a person forgot to do one of the pillars of the prayer, such as face the qibla, or anything else that's from the shurut of the salah, hypothetically speaking, his prayer will be valid based off of this speech here, according to the author. And he also says a rukn. In other words, if a person forgetfully left off one of the pillars of the salah, the prayer would not necessarily be null and void. Would the prayer be complete? That's a different story. Do you have to do something to fix it? Sujood as-sahw, perform the pillar once you remember, as long as it's not a long time after the taslim, etc. Those are secondary issues. But the original concept is that the prayer wouldn't be necessarily null and void. But if a person intentionally did not perform a pillar of the salah, then the author says the salah is what? Null and void. It is a very important three pieces that you can clearly see. Three pieces which is more than enough to keep you busy, to properly understand, to analyze, and to digest. And they will lead you to understanding, digesting, and analyzing bigger pieces or even more pieces and further issues of the salah. Now this subchapter is very important, and that is because he spoke on the prerequisites of the salah, how to make the salah. Common sense would now say how not to make the salah, what not to do in the salah. How do I protect my prayer? How do I make sure that my prayer is not going to be null and void? So this is the reason why the author and many other ulama have mentioned these chapters in their books. And the knowledge and the worship and the benefit of Islam and the Sunnah. And the Sunnah and Islam is not complete unless you know the truth and know the falsehood. Unless you know how to perform it and how not to perform it. How to get something and how to keep something. It's a very important principle in life. It's not about making money, but how are you going to protect the money that you make? Because anyone can get rich overnight. But how many people get rich and then they go broke instantly? Because they were not properly trained and educated and investing, saving money, investing their money, protecting their money, debt, extravagance, and the list goes on. So the principle of the ni'mah and any ni'mah of religion or of the worldly life cannot be complete until you learn how to get the thing and you learn how to protect the thing and safeguard the thing. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Wa sallallahu sallam wa barak ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabina Muhammad.